NPs and PAs are victims within their own right to the system because they were originally physician extenders. They were there to help the system where it was needed. But then due to certain things like COVID, it pushed them to a higher role than maybe many of them are comfortable with, which then has led to systems paying them less. Expect them to work in the capacity almost similar to a physician, but their training doesn't reflect that. Their training is not medical school. It is not residency. The hospital systems want that. They want more referrals. They want more tests, more prescriptions, because the system gets to make more money. They're gonna want physicians, clinicians to see as many patients as they can because that's how they're gonna get their profits. And so inadvertently, that then translates to the public as the doctor's only seeing you for 10, 15 minutes, but then he's charging this amount. That is literally out of our hands. Medicine,
law, friendship. This is Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. You're listening to the Medico-Legal Brief.
One doctor, one lawyer, and a whole lot of gray area.
What's going on, everybody? We have another episode of the Medico-Legal Brief where medicine meets the law. I'm Lawyer Nik. I'm here with Dr. Long. And Dr. Long, I have some questions for you, all right? Not everything is rainbows and butterflies. Not everything in the world is perfect. So I want to know the truth, the nitty-gritty details, the struggles, the frustration of being a physician, a doctor, an MD, a DO, who practices in family medicine. So I'm going to put you on the spot a bunch today, but I want to dive into what makes your day shitty. What are you frustrated with? Give you a vent session and see what we come up with.
I don't know if you're ready to open this can of worms, because I want to preface this. I really do love what I do, but I absolutely see the inefficiencies of the system. And I know that what we talk about today is fairly common knowledge among a lot of people who work in the medical field. Let's get in it.
Okay. This will lead in a further conversation about the good in family medicine. I also will probably do the bad in lawyering and why I am no longer a practicing attorney. But let's start off with the stuff that people won't say. And based in some of the comments in some of our recent social media posts, it seems like some people are afraid to admit the negatives that exist in medicine, and that they take the approach that it really is rainbows and butterflies and that nobody could do any wrong and their medical system is perfect. And even by you stating frustrations or negative critiques, you are doing wrong. You are the epitome of everything that's wrong in medicine. It's important to really speak about the negatives and speak about the things that exist. It lends itself to very truthful, honest discussion that a lot of people that are either in medicine, wanting to get into medicine, or even outside of medicine can then view and kind of take to heart.
It's one of those hard discussions because the physician is seen as such a leader in the communities. When you are a leader or when you're leading an organization, you always hope that physicians have the personality and the demeanor that can take a lot of hard hits. As physicians, we are taught that from the very beginning. Our whole education is kind of almost like going into the military, where you get hammered down to your bare bones and then they rebuild you back up, and you learn about all these hierarchical roles within the system, and then you have your spot and your place, and that's where they expect you, or the system expects you to remain and stay and be a good boy and girl. That has been cultivated over years and decades and centuries of education, and the system hasn't really shifted and changed much in terms of that sort of mentality.
It's funny that you say that because law school is very similar. There is a saying that law school is 3 years. The first year they scare you to death, the second year they work you to death, and then the third year they bore you to death. Because at that point, you kind of have it all figured out. But the first couple of years, they are beating you down either by scaring the shit out of you or literally working you to death with internships and coursework. Then finally, you get a hang of it. And when you come out the other end, you're like, wow, I'm a completely different person than I was before I went into this education system. Looking at your current role, and like you said, you love your role, there's obviously frustrations that exist. When you're preparing for work on and I guess I can't really say preparing for a work week on a Monday because doctors work all the time and crazy shifts and night shifts and weekends and holidays and all that. But like, you've had a day off and you're getting prepared for your work week. what are you dreading most? What is at the top of your brain of this is why I wish I could just wake up tomorrow on a beach and never have to work another day in my life? What does that look like?
Honestly, the biggest gripe and the biggest worry is whether or not I can get the care for my patients that they deserve and need. And usually the biggest barrier to that is insurances. Insurance companies are a huge headache for everyone and anyone that works in the medical field. We have to get their approval for everything. Their medication that is as simple as a cream for the rash that they have. Sometimes the specific brand they won't cover, so we have to figure out a different lesser brand that may be covered better. It could be life-saving medications like cancer treatments. Those are things that we're constantly dealing with on the back end. A lot of paperwork goes through the office every single day. There's prior authorizations. There's peer-to-peer conversations. This is going to be a conversation that I have to take 5-10 minutes out of my day in between patients, in between charting notes, to call another person that works in the insurance company to let them know why this patient deserves or needs this medication. And that is one of the things that I dread most, because I'm not always 100% successful in getting those appropriate medications. Most doctors are able to advocate enough to get what they need, but there are hard stops that insurances will just not budge.
So, are you telling me, and I don't want to sound facetious here, are you telling me that doctors and the insurance companies are not in cahoots and they're not walking hand in hand trying to make the most amount of money possible off their patients?
Gosh, if we were, I am still waiting for my paycheck, because I know they make so much and they profit so much on insurances, on our patients, and physicians and clinicians, that I'm waiting for that check if we truly are in cahoots.
Okay. This might be better saved for another discussion, but in the most basic level, you're given, the Spark Notes version. What does that process look like as far as you saying, I'm going to prescribe this, we need it covered by insurance? Just what is that streamlined process of what you have to go through?
Let's talk about a very simple medication for diabetes. Okay. We talk about those GLP ones. We've had those episodes before where we go dive deeper. But I see a patient, they're newly diabetic, they're overweight, obese, and we're trying to not only manage their sugars, but we're also trying to get them to live a healthier life, lose some weight, which will overall improve their cardiovascular risk and overall health as well. I prescribe a medication, GLP-1, and it has to get sent to the insurance. I have no idea how much it's going to cost for the patient. When I send it in, I'm just crossing my fingers and hoping for the best. I send it to the pharmacy. Pharmacy then checks with the insurance, and the insurance then tells the pharmacist how much it is. Is it covered fully? Is it covered partially? And then the pharmacist is the one that will tell the patient whether or not it is covered fully or not. The patient will then say, I can't afford that, or I can't afford that, and pick it up. Most of the time, they can't afford it. Then guess what? Now the patient has to call back to our office, to the physician who originally prescribed it, or the pharmacy calls back and tells us, hey, this medication was too expensive. Now, I either have to resend a new medication, try to find my second option and see if that gets covered, or maybe there was a misstep. Maybe we have to send a prior authorization, meaning we have to ask permission from the insurance. Hey, this patient truly does need this. This is my notes on it. These are the lab values. These are the things that are at risk if we don't start this medication. And then they use their doctors or their clinicians to determine whether or not it's appropriate. Hopefully, it gets approved. Takes about 1 or 2 weeks before it comes back, and then the patient is able to get the medication. In those rare cases where it's not approved, now there's two options. The patient can either appeal directly to the insurance and write their letter and say, hey, this is why I need it, this is why it's appropriate, versus me advocating for the patient and actually calling in to do what we call a peer-to-peer. I call in, and this is on their time. They're setting the time when we're allowed to call. We have to call within a certain timeline, but also only during their work hours, not our work hours. It's going to take another 10-15 minutes just to get to the actual physician, because we're calling and not getting a hold of the physician right away. We're going to get hold of the secretary or the nurse that is triaging. They then run through their system and look up the case, look up the patient, and see if there's anything within their algorithm that they could help or not help. And then that's when they say, okay, yes, we have to escalate this up to a peer-to-peer. And I have to sit on the phone and wait for them to connect with the physician. And who knows where that other physician is and what they're doing. And that may take 5, 10, 15 minutes, and which means it's time away from my patients. Once I actually talk to the physician on the other end, we're literally just going back through exactly what I already sent them, which was the note that I sent, and tell them this patient has diabetes. They are overweight, they're obese, and this is their cardiovascular risk. This is why they should be covered for this medication. Most of the time, they're like, okay, you're right, approved. And that is it. But it's that process that just grinds us and kills us every single time we have to make that call.
Really quick question. On average, How many patients do you see a day?
This ranges for me personally, I would say between 22 to 24 patients a day.
So theoretically, you could be doing this process for 22 to 24 patients a day if you're having to prescribe. Literally, you could be on the phone following up on these prescriptions all day long.
Yes, in a very worst case scenario, but I would say on average, maybe I do one or two a day.
For the most part, from being a patient, I think as soon as I'm walking out of that clinic or that doctor's office, that I'm kind of out of sight, out of mind. If a doctor's office calls me a few days later to check on me, I'm super flattered. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the best service ever. But I think as soon as the doctor walks out and the nurse comes in and they say, all right, here's your discharge instructions, this is what you're going to do, they're on to the next person. But you guys are actually doing a lot of background work on that patient still, even after they've left the facility.
Correct. And you're right. You're bringing up exactly why sometimes we get burnt out in the medical field, especially as family physicians, because patients don't realize that. And I don't know if that's the way we're presenting ourselves and the way corporations have set our schedule to seem like we don't care or that we don't spend enough time. That is another frustration I have about the system. But we truly do care. Every test that I order, I think about all the time. If I'm ordering an urgent test or a stat test, I'm constantly checking to see when the results come back. If I take something off of your skin and I'm worried about cancer, you bet I'm thinking about that in the middle of the night. Like, is this going to come back tonight? And do I have to do anything more for the patient? We're constantly thinking about things like that. We obviously have good memories because we have to memorize all these medical issues. Trust me, we remember our patients. We may not remember your name, but we know what we did for you or the treatment plan or what we've talked about in the past. Those little things eat at us, especially when patients call in frustrated, because sometimes it's out of our hands. Sometimes it's not our intention to cause harm. Sometimes there are other things within the system that causes that miscommunication.
There's a notion out there, at least from a patient standpoint, the uneducated patient, and this is why we do this podcast, is so we can educate people. But the uneducated patient believes that the doctor's office, the health insurance, the pharmacy, big pharma, everybody's in cahoots and they're all there trying to just rip off the patient, trying to bleed them money and not get things approved and not have to pay for everything. But it sounds like physicians, doctors, nurses, PAs, NPs are on the front line really trying to make sure that the patients are taken care of first and foremost.
A nice way to think about it is it's much easier for my life, and I probably would get paid better if I saw 30 healthy patients because they're going to be quick and easy visits. They're coming in just for their blood work, refilling their medications, and that's it. There's no complaints. I could see probably 30 in a day, easy. But if they're going to be 20 patients that are really complicated, that's going to eat up my mental capacity and stress me out and worry. I'd rather do the 30. It's never about trying to get more patients in the door. It's not our intention anyways, but it is the intention of the capitalistic health system that we work in. Obviously with the insurances, with specific health systems or hospital systems, they're going to want physicians, clinicians to see as many patients as they can because that's how they're going to get their profits. And so inadvertently, that then translates to the public as the doctor's only seeing you for 10, 15 minutes, but then he's charging this amount. That is literally out of our hands. We are not charging that because we want to, but that is what has been set up by the legislation, by the politicians, by the health systems and hospital systems that came before us.
It's very, very interesting. And your heart's in the right place because first frustration I ask you about is I'm being restricted by helping my patients. I want to help my patients and there are walls that are being put up that are preventing me from doing so. I appreciate that. Now let's take another step. What else is frustrating you? And maybe something that doesn't relate to patients. Maybe it relates to the hospital system. Maybe it relates to the monotony of the day. What else pisses you off on a day-to-day basis?
The other frustrating thing is that family medicine is actually considered at the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to specialties within the medical field. We are the second lowest paying physicians out there, and we are deemed as the specialty that everyone falls back to, or the people who couldn't make it to the higher surgical specialties go into family medicine. It's their last resort. And it's that misunderstanding that is really frustrating because yes, we are not a specialist in terms of experts in one specific area, but we have to know everything. We have to know little bits and pieces of everything. A jack of all trades is the way we describe it. Patients coming in with a specific chest pain, we have to think of all the different possibilities, from the most common things like heart attacks and chest wall pain to the most zebra things like myocarditis. Like those are things that we're constantly running through our mind, and the training reflects that. We have to spend so much time trying to learn those things, and we still have to do it within 3 years. We are underappreciated when it comes to other specialties and the way that they look at us and they treat us. A lot of paperwork gets thrown back to the family physicians. A patient is going to see a specialist like a neurologist for a seizure, or if they're going to a surgeon for a surgical procedure. The surgeon and the neurologist will manage the issue up to a certain extent. And then if it's beyond 2, 4 weeks, 3 months, whatever they deemed is appropriate, they will punt back anything after that to the family physician. If this patient is now on disability because of a seizure disorder, neurology really should be managing that, should be filling out that paperwork, but they're not going to. They're going to send it back to the family physician because they know family physicians are going to care. We don't want our patients not to get their disability payments. We want to make sure that they have some way of living. And so we're going to fill out the paperwork for them. But that's, again, additional time outside of seeing patients to fill out that paperwork.
That is very surprising to me, but then at the same time, not surprising. Because if I put it in the context of other careers, you look at teachers, you look at police officers, firefighters, paramedics, people in our military. There are a lot of important jobs out there that do not get paid what they probably should get paid in accordance with what they deal with, in accordance with the lasting impression. It's very sad to hear that some of our teachers who are shaping the minds of the future aren't getting paid what they should be getting paid. Bringing it over to what you're doing in family medicine, how do you handle the feedback that you're a doctor, you're getting paid more than anybody else on the planet? Why are you bitching and moaning about what you get paid? You knew what you were signing up for when you did. How do you handle that? Because obviously teachers are getting paid less than 6 figures. You're well into the 6 figures under most circumstances. How do you handle the, oh, woe is me, let's just complain some more, when you're like, I actually care and I want to make sure I'm being compensated appropriately for the time and effort and work and investment that I put in throughout my whole life to make sure I'm taking care of people?
I try not to feed into that narrative where we are the victim, because I agree. Physicians have a very important role in the community. We do get paid and compensated very well. A lot of people don't realize that a lot of us have a lot of debt, and we also want to build families, and we have to buy homes and cars, and those things can become a very difficult thing to do when you have 300, 400, even $500,000 in student debt that you have to pay off. Try not to feed that narrative. I try to focus in on what I can do within my means. And yes, it's frustrating when people mention that, but I don't take it to heart. I know that they're not saying it out of malice. They say it because they don't understand the stresses and difficulties of not only getting into medical school, but getting through medical school and residency and then coming out the other end. There are a small amount of physicians who actually graduate medical school, but then do not ever match or are actually able to become an attending, because whether that's health reasons or other life reasons, they just don't make it or get through it. There's just so many things, so many different scenarios that can go into it that can throw off this journey that we've dedicated ourselves to, that is a minimum of 11 years of our lives to get to where we want to be. I don't ask for our patients to treat me like a god. That's not my goal. I just want them to treat me like just another human being and understand that we all have our stressors, our things that we're trying to deal with and overcome and improve ourselves. And that our goal together when we come into that patient room is to try to find the best route forward together.
Dr. Long, I feel like we have a very similar viewpoint in the law with some of the professions that exist, where if you're going big law, you're going to go make couple $100,000. And we've talked about salaries on different podcasts. But when you do that, people look at you like, oh, you're successful, you're accomplished. There's some instances in which you look at the person who's going to go work at the public defender's office getting paid $60,000 a year, or going to go be a prosecutor. They couldn't hack it doing the big stuff. They couldn't make the grades. They couldn't do this. They couldn't do that. People don't actually take in consideration that there is a calling to certain careers. There's a reason why you do certain things, and there's a reason why in doing those things, you are not getting paid nearly as much as some of your other peers. Sometimes in our country, it's all about money. It's all about how far did you make it? How big is that bank account? Do you have millions in the bank or not? People miss out the fact that there is nobility and honor into having a calling and pursuing that calling to the utmost. From what I'm hearing you say, it sounds like with family physicians, they're our frontline physicians. They are taking the responsibility of our health over the course of a lifetime, and we are relying on them to guide us to the right place. When I go in and I say I'm having pain in my side, I want them to point me in the right direction. There's a lot of value in that. There's a lot of value in a jack of all trades. I want to put that out that there are a lot of careers where people just assume you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that, and that's why you're getting paid less or you're working miserable hours. But sometimes it's just a calling. You're doing it because that's what you love and that's what you're passionate about. And in our conversations, I know you love your job. I know you're passionate about your job, but it's a shame that you have the negative feedback and the negative critiques that come with that, especially within medicine, to where the neurosurgeons or the orthopedic surgeons or those in the higher total pole of medicine almost look down upon the family physicians as lesser when that's not really the case.
Correct. We are all part of a team. We're here to help the patient. I would say that we consider ourselves almost like the quarterback of the patient's healthcare. We are the ones that patients come to first, and you're hoping that the person in front of you, family physician or a family nurse practitioner or physician assistant, that they have the education and the experience enough to be able to delineate when something that looks common is actually something more serious, or when something that looks serious is actually very common. That's actually very hard to do, and it's very nuanced. That's why it's really important that you not only connect with the person in front of you, but that you are able to trust their judgment. That is another frustrating thing, especially with everything going on these days. The political landscape has then fed into and bled into the patient rooms. There are scenarios where we're sitting there having a conversation, and the first thing that they bring up is that on my research or Dr. Google said this or that. And it's, well, if you already came in with a preconceived idea of how you wanted this to move forward, what you wanted to be done and what you wanted to take, why are you coming to me? Am I just the prescription pad for you to get that medication? Or are we going to have a discussion on why maybe we shouldn't go down that route? That is another very frustrating thing that we have to deal with on a daily basis, because everything in reality, whether that's social media, whether that's politics, it all bleeds into that family medicine room. And when you're sitting there with your patients, whether you realize it or not, it's all affecting everything that we do on a day-to-day basis.
I can see the frustration because in the law that also occurs where people will come in for a client consultation, or they are your client and they say, well, I looked it up and I should be getting this, or I looked it up and really they broke the law here, here, and here. Hey, I'm a professional. I went to school. You're paying me money so I can make the decision for you. I don't want to sound like an asshole, but leave it to the person who has experience doing this. You can't really say that because it's bad rapport. You're doing wrong by the client. You're doing wrong by the patient. But there are instances in which you just want to say, you know what, if you're going to rely on AI, have them try your case. Oh, wait, your friend told you that this should happen. How about they go argue for you? Go pay them to do exactly what you want. Well, you think you could write the contract better? By all means, you don't have to hire me. Go do your thing. But you can't say those things. But those are things you want to scream at, like, trust me. That's why I'm here. That's why I went to school for so many years. That's why I've been practicing for so many years. Trust me to do right by you. Stop relying on all this misinformation, the Google, the AI, the WebMD, your neighbor's best friend's sister. Just trust me. That's why you're here. And we can't say that. You cannot say that to the people that you're helping, or you end up with political backlash and public backlash, and then you no longer have a license and everybody's up in arms because you're kind of saying what everybody else wants to say. I can relate heavily to that.
This is by no means me advocating for patients not to look things up. I actually want my patients to be well informed. It's how you take that information and discuss it with your physician that matters. Please bring in all the data that you want. I've read so many different articles about different medications and their off-label use that patients have brought in. Bring them to me so that I can help analyze it in a scientific manner and let you know whether or not the numbers make sense or whether or not that treatment plan makes sense. Let's have that conversation and make the decision together. I do not fault my patients for doing that. It's when they are blindly believing something and wanting that to be the absolutely end to their treatment. That's what they want, and they will not take no as an answer. Those are the frustrating things, because it leads into another issue that we'll kind of touch base in a little bit. But unfortunately, this healthcare system is also very much a clientele business. Every interaction, it just seems more and more business like, less and less relationship building as we move along here in our country.
I I feel the same way, man. I feel the exact same way. It's like you want somebody to be well informed and knowledgeable, but you just like, hey, trust me. I'm here to help you. That's why you're in my office. I want the best for you. Because that's the other thing. If I didn't want the best for you, you probably wouldn't be coming back. And I wouldn't have a line of people out the door trying and wanting to see me. I can definitely relate to that. There is this notion in professional careers of we're all trying to make a buck. Everybody in the United States, at least, is trying to survive, trying to make money, trying to get ahead, trying to pursue that American dream. The systems that are in place sometimes don't allow for us to be human. They don't allow for us to build the rapport and spend the time that we'd want to spend really getting to know the people. There have been many times where I've been working with a client and I'm having such a good time. I'm learning so much. I'm building such a great relationship and building all that trust. It's like, knock, knock, knock. They got to go. We got to go to the next thing. We got to go to the next thing, because the more people through the door, the more money we're going to make. But you kind of miss out on some of that just natural humans being human interaction for a capitalistic approach.
Right. And feedback. We're constantly getting feedback from the public, from our employers, from administrators. The other big thing that family physicians have to deal with are reviews. We have these systems where it's almost like a Yelp review. Patients are solicited to give feedback. Then that really turns healthcare into a business, because if you're not giving your patient what they're asking for, what's to say that patient isn't going to turn around and just give you a bad review because they didn't get what they want? That happens a lot. And that is so frustrating, because I'm saying no to this medication because I can see that this is going to harm you down the line, but you still want it. And so you get frustrated with me. Now you've got this ding on your profile. You've got this 1-star review by this patient that didn't get what they want. Sometimes it's because they didn't get their opiates. Sometimes it's because they didn't get their benzos, or maybe they came in on day 3 of their illness and they didn't get their antibiotic. Those are things that we are here to try to help prevent long-term issues. You think that they're going to help you short term, but we're thinking long term down the line, because we want your life to be as extended as long as possible and you're living your happiest and healthiest life. But sometimes it falls short. We think too in the short term and in the present moment too much that we forget all the things that go beyond that.
There's a similar thing in family law when you're looking at child custody cases. At a certain age, you can get the opinion of the child as to where to go. But there is back and forth. Son doesn't want to live with mom because mom does this, or son wants to live with dad because dad does this. And there's always this kind of notion of, well, of course son wants to live with dad. Dad lets him smoke weed and go out on the weekends and stay up till 2 o'clock in the morning and not do his homework. It's better to go with mom. But the complaint is that mom is the bad person, when really mom is the one trying to keep order and protect the child and look out for the best interest of the child. It's kind of similar, except you're getting feedback left for you saying, hey, this doctor was horrible because he didn't give me the pain medication that I am so drastically addicted to. Now I'm mad at it and I'm just going to complain about it and make him look bad.
Right, right. Again, we're venting. This is our episode where I get to vent as a family physician. This leads into just the way healthcare system is built nowadays, is that the profits do come in the more tests that get done, the more medications that get prescribed, the more scans that get completed. The system makes more money, not the physician. Remember, the physician doesn't make more money because of that, but the health system makes more money because of that. Family physicians, we are educated in childbirth, during birth, OB, during the pregnancy, all the way to geriatrics till their deathbed. We learn all the little facets, male, female, doesn't matter what. We learn all the little facets of health so that we can get you to the end. Well, there are starting to become differences in education across the landscape, and some clinicians are cheaper to hire. And those clinicians may not be as comfortable, or physicians who come from a different background may not be as competent in their education, are going to order more tests, are going to prescribe unnecessary things. The health system's going to love that. A hospital system's going to love that. Oh my gosh, we hire this person and they're not comfortable doing anything. So they're going to just refer out to 5 other physicians. That's 5 more visits that this patient gets to see in our health system. That means more money for us. They get to do an MRI, 6 different labs. That's a lot of additional money that's coming in revenue wise for the health system. There's been a huge push, huge push for hospital systems to hire clinicians that are less trained, that order more tests, and because it makes them more profitable.
Define clinician. What would a clinician be?
Clinician is just a broad umbrella of either physicians, nurse practitioners, physician assistants. We've had other episodes where we talk about good and bad physicians, good and bad nurse practitioners, and good and bad physician assistants. And the educational routes of each of those can dictate what they're comfortable managing. A nurse practitioner and a physician assistant, their education is not as extensive or broad or in-depth as a physician. So many of them may not be comfortable doing a lesion removal. So they're going to refer that patient out to surgery to get that lesion removed. Or maybe there's a rash that they're not comfortable managing or they don't know what it is. They're going to refer that to dermatology. Whereas the family physician, most of the time, I would say our education encompasses all those things because guess what? During our education, we do rotations with dermatologists, we do rotations with the surgeons. So we learn bits and pieces of these things so that we can then put them all together as that front line so that we can determine what needs to be sent out versus not. Ultimately, a good family physician hopefully is able to keep you in-house for most things and only send you out when it's absolutely necessary. But the system doesn't like that. Because if the family physician is doing all the work, that means that's less referrals, that's less medications, less tests and labs that need to be done. The system isn't making their profits.
So I'm going to say something from an outsider looking in, this from a lawyer speaking frankly. And that's the thing that lawyers are meant to do, is to give the negative feedback, give the bad expectation of what could happen. We have to be honest with people. I have seen PAs, NPs, and some physicians, obviously, that I absolutely love, absolutely adore. They have been wonderful and marvelous. And again, that goes to training and experience and the human core. I've also seen some that are absolutely horrendous. I had a horrible experience. I never want to see them again. And again, bad, good across all facets. I think that, especially with really diving into this podcast with you, that there is a sensitivity amongst NPs and amongst PAs in which when you call out the fact that there are some things that they should or should not be doing, that they take offense to it. But there are also some PAs and NPs that they actually say, yeah, that isn't my job. That isn't my role. That isn't my responsibility. I wasn't trained to do that. Therefore, I shouldn't have that. I would be the first one to state that as a lawyer who passed the bar and had to review all aspects of the law, I would not be the right person to do your death penalty case. At this point, I would not be the right person to try to fight against your parking ticket. I'm going to give that to somebody else who is a lot more qualified. But there is an ego that exists in the world, whether it's a new physician, whether it's an NP, whether it's a PA, whether it's just an RN, a nurse, where they think they know it all. They think they've seen it all. And so by that very nature, they think that they are at the same level and in some instances surpassing those that have a higher education, more experience, more licensing. I've seen that a lot in the feedback in some of our posts and some of our comments and back and forth. That notion drives me crazy because it's an individual not being introspective and understanding what they are capable of handling. From what I'm hearing, the system may encourage that notion a little bit, because if I'm a PA and I know that I shouldn't be handling these things and the company is providing me probably positive feedback saying, hey, you're doing excellent. You're doing wonderful. Keep doing what you're doing. Here's a little bonus. Here's, you working your way up the ladder. We really appreciate you. Because they're making money for the company. And they come back and they say, I'm doing wonderful. I got my review and I'm doing great. Obviously, in life, there needs to be a little bit of overstep. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to push it a little bit. You got to keep pushing your limits so you can learn. But there's appropriate ways of doing that. And I don't know if these clinicians are actually doing it. When you speak out against it, in the world, there's a lot more NPs and a lot more PAs and a lot more nurses than there are physicians. Just by the very nature of being outnumbered, people are coming in droves saying this isn't how it's supposed to be. But ego and the notion of people telling other people, oh yeah, you got it, you can do it, you can do anything. It's like, well, no, it's life or death. For medicine, it's life or death, literally. So I say that, I don't mean to offend, because like I said, there are NPs and PAs out there and new physicians and just general clinicians that have had an amazing time. I would trust them with a lot of different things. But I feel like there are those out there that overstep, at least what I've seen from some of the feedback we've gotten. If a doctor says it, you guys are immediately put on blast. I don't think that's appropriate.
And again, I think that NPs and PAs are victims within their own right, too, of the system because they were originally physician extenders. They were there to help the system where it was needed. But then, due to certain things like COVID, it pushed them to a higher role than maybe many of them are comfortable with, which then has led to the scenario we're in now where hospital systems are paying them less. They should probably get paid a little bit more and then expect them to work in the capacity almost similar to a physician. But their training doesn't reflect that. Their training is not medical school. It is not residency. We can't put all the onus on NPs and PAs because when they refer out, it's because they realize they need the help. And that's important that when they know their shortcomings, that they reach out for help. So I do not want NPs and PAs to think that is the wrong thing to do. But the system has created to where the hospital systems want that. They want more referrals. They want more tests, more prescriptions, because the system gets to make more money.
And it almost seems like the system is pitting you guys against each other under some circumstances, where that is your team. As a physician, you are overseeing your NPs, you're overseeing your PAs, you're overseeing your nursing staff. You are all supposed to be working together as a team. And so why is there so much discourse when it comes down to it? There should not be as much frustration with your team member. Maybe I'm just old school and I recognize and understand there's a hierarchy to things. The generations coming up are being taught you can push the hierarchy, you can get outside of the hierarchy and provide that feedback. And there's more support for that. It's very frustrating when you're like, we're all supposed to be a team here, but as soon as I provide negative feedback to one person, I am now doing wrong by the entire department.
You're right. The good doctors, the good PAs and the good NPs realize that we are on a team and that we work well together. It's the ones who feel like they are the sole reason the team exists. Those are the ones that then cause an issue. And sometimes that has been cultivated by the higher ups, whether that is administration, whether that's politicians, legislators. They've created this it's almost like a political landscape where Democrats can't talk to Republicans. They want this discourse so that they can cherry pick. They can then push the cheaper labor forward and keep the more expensive labor in the back. But I don't want to harp on that too much because guess what? I got so much more to vent about. We've talked about it and we've touched on it, but paperwork is the bane of our existence. Documentation, paperwork, everything on the back end. Patients don't realize that what we do in the office, we get paid for, meaning from 8 to 5, we're seeing patients. That's the time that the hospital pays us for. They do not pay us to do anything else outside of work. They don't pay us to go home and complete our charts. On average, it takes an additional 2 to 3 hours per physician to complete their notes every single day. And that's to see a full panel of patients. So usually 18 to 22 patients a day. And then they have to go home and chart on all those patients and making sure that everything gets closed out, everything was ordered properly, and then also interpreting any sort of results. Once the x-ray comes back and the radiologist has read it, it's got a lot of medical jargon. Guess what? Someone has to translate that to the patient. That's going to be your family physician. Those are the things that we have to do in between patients or at the end of the day, outside of work hours.
How many hours a day, a 24-hour period? Obviously, you got sleep, you got family time, you got to eat, you got to go play pickleball. How many hours a day do you think are dedicated to your practice as a doctor, whether you're getting paid for it or not?
We're going to talk about averages and not me, okay? Because I work very differently. I'm very efficient. I use AI quite a bit. But on average, we are working in a 24-hour period, usually close to 11 to 12 hours a day, because you're not only seeing patients for the 8 to 9 hours, but then you're charting for 2 to 3 hours in addition to that. It seems like a lot, and it is a lot because we're doing it when we get home. We want to spend time with our family, so we got to wait till the kids go to bed, our spouse goes to bed, then we have to go finish out the notes. It's being done at late hours of the day or maybe first thing in the morning when they wake up. We really care about our patients, so our minds never shut off. On weekends, I know that nothing crazy is going to happen and that there is a system in place for my patients to go to the emergency room, but I'm always checking my inbox to make sure that there is not something that fell through the cracks. I'm checking to make sure that results that maybe I didn't intend to be a an issue doesn't come back an issue. I'm constantly thinking about it, and I'm always doing it, and I don't calculate. I don't keep track of those, 10, 15 minutes where I'm sifting through my inbox on the weekend. But it's there, and we all do it.
And I also think there's a difference between working, let's just say an 8-hour day, working a lax 8 hours and working a hard 8 hours. When I was in aerospace, we had to work 10-hour days because we had every Friday off. And those 10-hour days, down to the minute, were all billed. It was literally transitioning from this to that, to this to that. There was no off time, because if you had off time where you were looking at your phone for 20 minutes or you were looking at a YouTube video, you couldn't charge that time. You had to make up for it. Working a true 10 to 12-hour day is very, very, very rough. When some salaried positions out in the world, it's, well, hey, I'm on salary. I'll look at my March Madness bracket, or I'll check the game, or I'll look at a YouTube video, or talk to my wife for 30 minutes. That's not a hard 8 hours, 9 hours, 10 hours. That's a lax one. What you've described is, I'm getting there, I'm running through patients, I'm putting in orders, I'm talking to pharmacies, I'm talking to insurance, I'm talking to the people below me, I'm talking to the people above me, and then I'm still worried about my patients. When I get home, I still have stuff to do. I'm still checking email. That's a hard day. Your brain's not shutting off at that point.
Yeah, and that's why physicians have a high burnout rate. We have a high substance use rate, as well as suicidal rates. These are all high and well known, and data that's out there. It's because it is a very high stress career. We don't choose it to make money. We don't go into this profession to become millionaires, because there are much easier jobs to become rich more quickly. I would say physicians do initially go into this field for the right reasons, but somewhere along the way that may change and evolve to something different. And that's where I wish patients understood that it's the process that changes us. It's not the physician that changes throughout that journey. But I want to make sure that we end on a really, really positive note. I know that we're going to have an episode where I talk about all the wonderful things that I love, but the reason why family medicine is so awesome for me is because of that variety, and that every patient that I see, everything that I do is different. Every 20 minutes, I get to do something different. And that keeps my brain excited, and it doesn't get bored. The day is very stressful, but honestly, I couldn't see myself doing anything different. With that said, I want to end this episode here on the Medico-Legal Brief with Dr. Long and Lawyer Nik. And these were just a little bit of tidbits and venting session on what we have to deal with as family physicians. But I hope you follow up on our different episodes that get posted on Wednesdays to 10 a.m. Central Time. We are on Instagram, TikTok, Spotify, and YouTube. Please follow us, like, comments, and we'll see you next time. Yes, we're doctors. Yes, we're lawyers. No, this podcast is not medical or legal advice. Do not take anything we say as a reason to perform your own heart surgery, represent yourself in court, or diagnose your neighbor's rash. This is for entertainment only. Think of it like hanging out with your smartest, wittiest friends, not a substitute for an actual appointment. If you act on anything we say without talking to your own professional, that's on you. Seriously, don't do that.